Allow me to introduce you to a new force emerging in American law enforcement, the Federal Bureau of Imagination. The FBI has always been tasked with investigating crime. Now, under the leadership of Kash Patel, it seems poised to start imagining it instead. His first major act as director was the relocation of 1,500 FBI employees from Washington, D.C., sending 1,000 to field offices across the country and another 500 to a facility in Huntsville, Alabama. The justification is dressed in the language of efficiency, moving agents closer to the communities they serve and shifting focus away from bureaucratic entrenchment. But the practical effect is clear. The country's most powerful political and financial actors will no longer be meaningfully investigated because the people tasked with doing so are being systematically removed from where they need to be. This is not about decentralization. It is about removing federal oversight from the nation's power center and replacing it with selective enforcement elsewhere. At its core, the FBI's presence in Washington is built around three essential functions: counterintelligence, government integrity, and financial crimes enforcement. Each of these is not just being weakened, but inverted, turned away from oversight of power and redirected toward reinforcing it. One of the FBI's primary functions in Washington has always been counterintelligence, tracking and preventing foreign espionage, cyber intrusions, and election interference. The agents responsible for this work operate in close coordination with the State Department, Department of Defense, Treasury, and intelligence agencies. They monitor illicit foreign lobbying infiltration attempts and covert funding channels used to sway American policymaking. Their targets are not ordinary Americans, they are foreign operatives and their domestic collaborators at the highest levels of government and business. By relocating these personnel, Patel ensures that these efforts are fractured, delayed, or outright abandoned. There will be fewer eyes watching foreign money moving through American politics, fewer agents tracking cyber warfare threats targeting critical infrastructure, and fewer cases pursued against those who profit from these covert influences. At the same time, Patel and his allies have signaled that they want the FBI's national security focus turned inward, not against espionage, but against domestic ideological opponents. Instead of chasing foreign spies, the Bureau's counterintelligence framework will be redirected toward anti-government extremists, a definition that just happens to map onto critics of the administration, whistleblowers, and investigative journalists. Where once the FBI's mission was to protect America from foreign infiltration, it is now being restructured to manufacture threats from within, an imagination of enemies, rather than the investigation of actual threats. The FBI's Washington field office is home to the Public Corruption Unit, which investigates misconduct at the highest levels of government. Its work spans from prosecuting bribery and fraud in federal agencies to investigating abuse of power by elected officials. This unit has historically played a key role in cases against Congress members, high-ranking executive officials, and even intelligence personnel engaged in wrongdoing. By removing the personnel who conduct these investigations, Patel is doing more than just slowing them down. He is ensuring they don't happen at all. Fewer agents in Washington, D.C. means fewer subpoenas for corrupt officials, fewer whistleblower protections, and fewer accountability measures for those in power. But the negation of government integrity doesn't stop at inaction. It will be replaced with selective action. Patel has already made clear that he sees his role not as enforcing the law impartially, but as hunting political enemies. The Bureau's mission is shifting from prosecuting corruption to persecuting opposition. If an official is loyal, misconduct will be ignored. If they are disloyal, an investigation can always be imagined into existence. The weaponization of anti-corruption efforts is particularly dangerous because it creates a chilling effect on anyone who dares to challenge power. If investigations are no longer based on evidence but on allegiance, then the mere possibility of being accused becomes a tool for enforcing silence and obedience. Much of the FBI's most complex financial crime work happens in D.C., where it operates in coordination with the Treasury Department, IRS, SEC, and other regulatory agencies. These teams track everything from corporate fraud and money laundering to illicit campaign finance and white-collar crime. The presence of these agents ensures that federal investigators have direct, real-time access to financial disclosures, banking records, and insider trading investigations, the lifeblood of any effort to hold economic elites accountable. By moving these personnel out of DC, Patel is ensuring that federal financial oversight becomes fragmented and ineffective. The fewer agents there are overseeing dark money networks, foreign financial influence, and corporate fraud, the easier it becomes for those in power to operate with impunity. But again, this isn't just about what will be lost, it's about what will replace it. The FBI's financial crime units will not vanish, they will change focus. Instead of pursuing high-level economic crimes, they will be tasked with investigating perceived threats from below: labor unions, activist networks, crowdfunding efforts for dissident groups. Rather than tracking massive financial crimes by the ruling class, the Bureau will be repurposed to target financial resistance from the working class. The result is an inversion of justice. Wealth will no longer be something to investigate, but something to defend. And those who attempt to challenge the economic order will find themselves under scrutiny in ways they never were before. Each of these transformations, the shift from foreign threats to domestic enemies, the collapse of corruption investigations, and the redirection of financial crime enforcement, does not happen in isolation. They feed into and justify one another. When counterintelligence ceases to function, foreign influence on American politics expands unchecked. This influence, in turn, breeds more government corruption, which, without oversight, flourishes into an elite network beyond accountability. With that network protected, economic misconduct becomes the rule, not the exception, creating an oligarchic system where power is no longer constrained by law, but by who has the resources to wield it without consequence. In this new system, the FBI is not being dismantled, it is being repurposed. It will no longer serve as a check on those who rule, but as an enforcer of their power. It will still investigate crime, but only the crime they imagine to exist. It will still prosecute misconduct, but only when the target is politically expedient. It will still claim to defend democracy, but only in name. And this is the ultimate danger, that a once powerful investigative body does not disappear, but is transformed into something unrecognizable. The Federal Bureau of Investigation will still exist, but its mission will be dictated not by truth, but by the imagination of those in charge. And in such a system, no one is beyond suspicion, because the crime is never the crime itself. The crime is whatever they decide it to be.